Bonjour and welcome to Mulaire face mask. So you'll need a pair of scissors, a tape measuring, the kit, the size chart, and instructions, and pins. So let's begin. First thing is you will find your size. So you take the measuring tape and you measure from one earlobe to the other over the mouth. And for me it's 10.5. I look on my size chart and it's a small. And cut out the small pattern. If you want to keep the three sizes, feel free to trace the patterns of the three sizes in order to keep the patterns. So then you can actually make more masks. Next step, you will trace the pattern onto your lining and onto the main fabric. You can use this with the fabric chalk or even a Sharpie. Next step, you're going to cut out the patterns. Next step, you'll take the pattern and you'll make a mark where your ties needs to be. You can use a little marker or you can also take a little scissor and cut that little piece to make the mark. Now using the main fabric pieces, join this curved seam that is the center of the mask by placing the good side together and sew them in place. Repeat this for the lining fabric. So I used a seam allowance of 1/2 inch to sew my curves. Next step, you open your fabrics, both of the fabrics, and you will sew the outer fabrics to the inner fabrics together. So pin the first corner, open the seam of both because it will just help make it flatter, and then add another pin at the end to keep it together. And sew 1/2 inch all across the top. One trick that I found is to put the bamboo part on the bottom and to use the cotton fabric on top. That way it doesn't pull as much. Now seeing the marks that you made for the ties, take your scissor, cut a little notch. I usually do this and then I open up my fabric and I make sure it matches from the lining and the main fabric. So the floral, which is your main fabric, I make sure it's matching on both sides and I cut a little piece and then I do the top part, careful your fingers, and then I do the lining part too. Now you take one big tie provided and you cut it in 4 equal parts to make 4 ties. So 4 ties makes 1 mask. I fold it in 3 to make a little loop tie, smaller tie. And so you will pin it to one of the notches that you cut on your main fabric. So this is happening on your main fabric, on the floral fabric or your solid cotton fabric. 2 on one side and 2 on the other side. Finally, sew around the mask, each of the edge 1 and 2, making sure you leave the bottom part open. Next step is you will measure 1.5 from the bottom on each of the corners like you see. You can either do 1.5 or 1 inch. You'll top stitch again with the seam allowance of 0.5 inch all the way to your mark. You're almost done. All you need to do now is turn the seam up from the bottom and serge around, and this will allow you to have an opening to put any filter you want. If it helps, you can pin the opening and it'll help you keep your seam down for top stitching it. Top stitch around. Bravo! You are almost done! Now all you need to do is turn the mask inside out. So if you want to press the mask, you can. It's optional. This step has no functionality value. It is only to make your mask look better. Et voilà! Perfect fit.